The grid, a digital frontier. I tried to picture clusters of information as they moved through the computer. What did they look like? Ships? Motorcycles? Were the circuits like freeways? I kept dreaming of a world I thought I'd never see. And then, one day, I got in.
Hello, movie friends. Welcome to Raiders of the Lost podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. And today we are doing Disney's TRON Legacy, a full review and analysis of Joseph Kosinski's film. And if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, you'll notice that our entire set is blue.
We're on the grid.
But we have the blue and yellow with Edison bulbs.
That's
too.
kind of cool. So we kind of created the aesthetic of the grid and the digital frontier that Kevin Flynn created in the film. Now, Tron Legacy came out in 2010, directed by Joseph Kosinski, the biggest directorial debut in the history of cinema with a budget of $170 million. And yes, this was his first film, written by Edward Kitsis, Adam Horowitz, and Brian Kligman, starring Jeff Bridges, Garrett Hedlund, and Olivia Wilde. Tron Legacy on IMDb is a 6.8. Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 51% critic score. Rotten, 63% audience score. It was nominated for Best Sound Editing at the Academy Awards, as well as nominated for a Grammy for Best Album. Now follows, and this is a sequel to the original Tron, which came out in 1982, obviously, follows Sam Flynn, the tech-savvy 27-year-old son of Kevin Flynn. He looks into his father's disappearance and finds himself pulled into the same world of fierce programs and gladiatorial games where his father has been living for 20 years. Along with Kevin's loyal confidant Cora, father and son embark on a life-and-death journey across a visually stunning cyber universe that has become far more advanced and exceedingly dangerous. Meanwhile, the malevolent program Clue, who dominates the digital world, plans to invade the real world and will stop at nothing to prevent the escape.
How much was the budget for this film?
About $170 million.
Okay, because there's another movie that was a debut that might give it a run for its money.
Recently? Recently. What was it?
47 Ronin, the Keanu Reeves film.
Okay, maybe that's bigger then.
So its budget is estimated between $175 and $220 million. It was given to a first-time film director, as a music video director, and it's considered probably the biggest box office bomb of the century so far, because how much was invested in it only made $120 million. But
I don't even think I've ever seen it.
It's terrible.
I know of it.
It's a terrible movie. But that might take the cake for the biggest debut of all time. But it's like
pretty close, yeah.
But they're probably about the same. But I would say Disney might not have put out the accurate numbers maybe on their total budget.
No studios ever do. Let's be honest.
But 47 Ronin, it was. I was excited for it. It didn't live up to the hype, and that director has never done anything since because, it was just such a bad overall film, as opposed to Kosinski, who has turned into one of the more exciting directors working in the last 10 years or so, because after Tron Legacy, which is a fantastic debut for a first-time director, he made a very cool sci-fi film with Oblivion, which also, I think you can compare it to Tron Legacy, where it has its problems in the story department, but visually, it's stunning, and it's really well directed and executed. And then he did the Firefighter movie with Josh Brolin and Miles Teller. And then he did, obviously, Top Gun Maverick, baby.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah.
We love us some Joseph Kosinski.
What's funny is that he made one of my favorite movies of the last few years, and it's without a doubt his best movie, Top Gun Maverick. It's ironic because of how little visual effects are in the film and how it's dependent on practical effects as opposed to his first two films, which are so heavily dependent on visual effects. However, they did build a lot of these sets. We watched this at the New Bev last week, and I hadn't seen it for a few years. And I'll preface this whole episode. I'm going to be a little critical of this film.
You have to be.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. And I really liked it when we first saw it, when it first came out. I think we were like 20, 21. And I've watched it. I think this is my fourth time rewatching it last week. And it's just really, what I look at it is it's kind of a missed opportunity in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that work really well, and a lot of it is very exciting, but then a lot of it is just honestly kind of underwhelming, kind of disappointing, and it ends up actually being quite a slow movie. But for a first film, it's really impressive, and it obviously is famous for its visual effects, which still hold up today. Aside from Clue and young Kevin Flynn's face, the rest of the visual effects are phenomenal, and honestly, you can put them up against many modern movies, and it'll probably look better than modern movies. So what they did with the visual effects and animation in this film is incredible. But ironically, and I really noticed it this fourth time watching it in theaters, they did build quite a lot of sets, and a lot of that practicality really helped with the visual effects, combining them together, making them look and feel better.
I mean, the budget was huge, and just the wardrobe department was $13 million
Whoa.
for making these custom suits, and I got some cool information on the suits. But I love Tron Legacy. I gave it 4 stars on my Letterboxd review, but also I think it does have problems. I think it has all of the pieces of a generational sci-fi blockbuster film that could have been a really great movie. It was almost
Really
there.
great.
It's so close. It gets held back, though, by pacing, the screenplay. Same thing with Oblivion, which I think Oblivion is such a great first hour. Really great concept. That's a completely original sci-fi story. We don't get many of those on that scale. And I mean, kudos to Joseph Kosinski. He turned that into a graphic novel and then made a movie based off of it. So it's really impressive to create a world like that. Not many people have, the ideas to do stuff like that. So I think he's a really impressive storyteller. He's got great ideas and concepts. But the same thing with Oblivion and Tron Legacy, they both kind of peter going into the third act, and kind of an underwhelming conclusion in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Tron Legacy really slows down, and we'll get into it, but I think the first hour and a half is really solid, and I think the visual effects alone, as well as Daft Punk making an all-time score, really make up for some of the weaknesses of the film, which we'll get into. But the suits worn by the actors in Tron Legacy proved to be problematic on set. Every single one of them was fitted with a small lithium battery that powered the circuitry for the embedded light strips, but each battery only lasted 12 minutes. In order to maximize the output, the light strips had to be switched on right before each take and turned off immediately afterwards. The circuitries inside the suits were also very fragile, so the actors could not simply sit between takes, but had to recline against upright boards. And again, the wardrobe budget was $13 million for Tron Legacy. One custom suit alone for the racers cost $60,000 just to make one of those suits, which is crazy. At the time, it was the most expensive film ever made by a first-time director with a production budget of $170 million. And, I mean, there's so many cool things to talk about with this film.
But first, for a first-time director, he still had a lot of experience in narrative storytelling. So Joseph Kosinski began his career as an architect, most notably with 3D modeling and animation and computer imaging. And so he brought that into the world of commercials and music videos. So he actually did quite a impressive number of ads, whether it be commercials for brands, products, fashion, or music videos, and incredible 3D imaging and CGI work that he was doing primarily with himself and his team. And he was doing like big time commercial spots using this incredible software and skills he has with CGI imagery. And that's what got him the meeting with the head of Disney. And the head of Disney was like, they were looking for someone who was well versed in CGI imaging and computer graphics, and also not just doing that, but doing it in a storytelling capacity, which he had been doing early in his career. And so it seemed like a no-brainer for them to hire him. And he had never done a film before, but I'm sure he was looking to doing something. And now he's just only done films since then. But he had a meeting with head of Disney, and the head of Disney was like, "What do you think? How would you imagine this world to be?" Because he was like the guy for commercials for CGI. He was killing it. So they were like, they brought him in to see what he thought, and he had an idea, but he said, he basically was like, "I can't just like tell it to you. Let me show you. So give me some money, and I'll put something together." So the head of Disney lent him some money. I'm guessing like maybe $2 to $5 million. And Joseph Kosinski and his team, they created basically like a little 2.5 minute teaser of a light cycle battle from how he envisioned the grid to look like with modern technology. And they showed this, Disney showed this at Comic-Con 2008 because they loved it and they were so impressed. And it didn't have anything really to do with the story so much, but it was just like a proof of concept. And it was a way to get fans excited, to let them know that we're serious about making a Tron sequel, and this is what we're expecting. I remember seeing the trailer online like so many years ago because it was an uproarious event at Comic-Con. It blew people's minds who were fans of Tron, and it was like a surprise thing, the sizzle reel tease that they made, and it looks very similar, and oftentimes shot for shot, some of the sequences that he ended up using for Tron Legacy. So once that sizzle reel showcased what his vision was and that he could do it, I think it was a no-brainer for the head of Disney to be like, okay, you're the guy, let's do it.
That's really similar to how in 2007, Neil Blomkamp, who obviously is the director and writer of District 9, got a small budget to make a short film called Halo Landfall, which was a little mini short about Halo and Master Chief in a battle from the game, based on the game, to make a potential movie. And I thought that movie was going to get made. I thought that short was so cool. But I've kind of missed when studios just take chances on filmmakers. Just like, let's see what you got for like a couple million. Let's see your vision. But now it just seems like they don't even want to waste their time or money on doing something like that for potential stories.
Yeah, the Blomkamp one is interesting because it was Peter Jackson who ended up funding that project for him because he had seen his District 9 short, which Blomkamp made with Charlton Copley, his coworker at the time. They were just working in an office. And Charlton Copley was actually his manager in the office.
And he's the lead in District 9.
Yeah, lead in District 9. So they made this short film for District 9. It's like an 8-minute short. There's some incredible CGI because Blomkamp, like Kosinski, was so adept at using CGI on his own and just like a stunning artist with the technology.
Did they even get any work done at the office?
Probably not. Probably not. I know Charlton Copley ain't complaining because he's an actor, well respected actor now, and it's a very similar trajectory to Kosinski and how, you know, working on his own and being really incredible at using this new technology really put his foot in the door, just like Gareth Evans with Monsters, eventually getting Kong in Godzilla vs. Kong. So the technology sometimes moves so fast that it moves so fast, and then there are some people like these young filmmakers like Kosinski, like Evans, or Gareth Edwards, I mean, and then like Blomkamp, who they have a knack for the technology, and that puts them over other young up-and-coming filmmakers because they can do something that previously only a movie studio could do, but they can do it on their own computer, which is something that's never really been possible before, to make it such an incredible spectacle as like a small piece of film, and like Kosinski starting out with the shorts and then eventually commercials, and then leading into one of the most visually stunning films of that year.
And, I mean, visual stunning, yes, it is, and it still holds up today, like Anthony said, minus the de-aging on Jeff Bridges' face for young Kevin Flynn in the flashback opening, as well as Clue for the rest of the film. Now, when this came out, I thought it was really incredible, and it held up really well. However, like Anthony said earlier, we saw this at the New Beverly Cinema in Hollywood last week at a midnight screening. It was packed, and this movie has a cult following for a reason, and everyone was so excited, and everyone was in line. It was huge. But as soon as the young,
in the opening,
Kevin Flynn turned to camera when he's leaving the house after he has, like he says goodnight to Sam and everything, he turns to the camera and he says, "We're always on the same team, right?" Everyone laughed. Everyone laughed. It did not look that great. Did not hold up that well. Again, we're seeing it on a big screen. I'm sure it looks a little better on a TV in your home. But it just didn't hold up. It didn't look real at all anymore. But at the time, it looked.
I
really
remember
great.
it looking good when I first saw it.
And basically, well, I think there were a lot of good decisions made in this film, visual effects wise and cinematography wise. Kosinski got Claudio Miranda to shoot this film, and he had just done The Curious Case of Benjamin Button back in 2008 for David Fincher.
The de-aging and that looks great.
So they used similar de-aging technology as they did for Brad Pitt on that film, but I guess it just wasn't as good.
Here's the thing. With Benjamin Button, they were aging him most of the time. So
and the de-aging, it was soft lighting and everything. Yeah.
De-aging, all you have to do with Brad is because in 2008, he still looked so young.
Yeah.
Just get rid of some of his blemishes and stuff. They didn't really have to recreate a new face.
And when he's a teen, he's like kind of silhouetted by light.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose since it was really, although that is an effects-heavy film, Benjamin Button is very effects-heavy.
I think that's one of the reasons why he got Claudio on.
But it is interesting that, I mean, it looks way better than Tron Legacies. But here's the thing with the de-aging. I think that using Clue was a good idea for a villain, because I understand it works great as a metaphor, as a reflection of Kevin Flynn and his flaws and his flawed ideology back then. I do, however, think that they went too young with the de-aging. Now, it could have worked better. And I understand the concept, and it was like, oh man, this looks so cool, but it really does not look good at this modern era. Like, looking back on it, it is noticeable. Even for the rest of the film, it looks like it's a video game. What I think would have worked better for Clue is it didn't have to be 35-year-old Jeff Bridges. It could have been 50-year-old Jeff Bridges. So he could have been working on the grid for a couple of decades after the first film, and it would still work with the timeline of Sam's age, where, you know, so when Jeff Bridges creates Clue, he could have been 50, had some more of a dark brown hair, if they just darkened his hair and his beard, no white or anything, just a little bit, and just gotten rid of some blemishes with CGI, you didn't really have to de-age his face that much. The color of someone's hair can really make them look younger and really make them look older. I mean, look at a Rogaine commercial. And so if they had just done that, and then you have like a 65-year-old Kevin Flynn, who is the present-day Jeff Bridges, the white hair, white beard, they'll look 15 years different, and it will look perfect and seamless. And so I think they got a little too ahead of themselves going so young with Bridges. I think they could have gone with, a younger Bridges, but 10 to 15 years younger. It didn't have to be 30 years younger, and it'd still work with the story of him getting locked in the grid when Sam was a kid, and Sam being a kid would still match up with Jeff Bridges being 50, because when Sam's an adult with Garrett Hedlund in this film, Jeff Bridges is about 65, 66, so it would have worked with the timeline, and it would have just looked seamless for the entire film.
Or, I mean, most people haven't seen Tron in 1982 when they went to go see this movie. So even story-wise, you don't have to explain it. Just make him like 50.
Yeah.
Make
Exactly.
Kevin Flynn like 50 years old in the flashback. Like, no one cares. I think people would have totally accepted it.
Yeah.
Just de-age him a little bit. Clean him up a little bit. He looked great when he was 50 years old. He still does.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that you're right. They got a little ahead of themselves. Let's make him look like he's 35. Make him look like he's 50. He probably would have been a lot easier and held up a lot better.
And it still would have worked with the story where it could have been like him and Clue were working on the grid for years.
But even you don't even need to do that. People have been like, oh, yeah, it's a younger version of him. It's fine. Like, that's because this is like old Hollywood. Just have the same actor be 20 years younger. Like, no one cares.
Yes.
People accept it.
And I'm telling you, just darkening his hair and beard would have worked wonders with de-aging. That would have
cleaning it up with like airbrushing. Basically.
Yeah, that would have helped out so much, and it would have helped the film on rewatches.
True,
because it is, in a lot of ways, the face of Clue is quite distracting, because there's just like the empty, emotionless, animated version of the face. You know what I mean? And then when you see his teeth, it's like, oh shit. But for the rest of the film, the visual effects are stunning.
And you accept Clue going
you accept it
for the rest of the film. You accept it eventually, even during that crazy speech at the end. It's like, yeah, I get it, but it works eventually. But this movie overall, visual effects are astounding, and Claudio Miranda, incredible cinematographer. Now him and Joseph Kosinski, they made every film together. He was on Oblivion, Top Gun Maverick, obviously. So I think, and he's also an Oscar winner. He won an Oscar for Best Cinematography for Life of Pi, Ang Lee's film in 2012. So just a really talented cinematographer getting behind the camera for his films, especially this. Also, some more pros besides the visual effects real quick. I think this movie is just so goddamn cool. It's one of the coolest movies of the century, in my opinion. It's so fun. And I think the musical score by Daft Punk really is an all-timer. It's one of my most listened to ever since this movie came out. I know the tracks by heart. I know the opening by heart of Jeff Bridges' overture, The Grid. I love
like
it
we heard
so
in
much.
the opening of the episode.
Something about this score, it's just bumping so well, and they have a great cameo in the film as well. They're the DJs in that club, but I think the music is so important to this movie, and it really elevates it to a different level. Plus, Rinzler, one of my favorite kind of anti-hero antagonists in recent memory. I think he's such a badass character. Obviously, Rinzler is a reprogrammed Tron by Clue. And then also another great pro, it's a really solid father and son story. Hollywood, the last 5-10 years, has moved away from father and son stories. Of course, there are some. I think Minari is a good example of a father-son story. There are a few outliers for sure, but now generally, we don't really get father and son stories very often in Hollywood, especially in big budget films. When was the last time you saw a really good father-son story in a big picture? Off the top of my head,
in a big picture.
Right now, can't really think about it. It's generally fathers and daughters now, or mothers and daughters, but fathers and sons.
Yeah, where are the boys at?
For main characters in a big blockbuster, they don't really happen anymore.
Yeah, the boys are generally bullies.
The boys are just gone. They're phasing the boys out.
They're the bullies of the kid now.
And it's tough for so many people who love movies and grew up watching films like this. Father and son stories we connect to obviously very much. I connect to mother and daughter stories as well.
Yeah, I would say How to Train Your Dragon is the most recent good version.
Yeah, I mean it's animated.
Yeah,
I'm talking in live action. When was the last great live action father son story, big blockbuster?
No idea, man.
It's always it's changed. They phased it out of Hollywood. It's obvious. You can't deny it. It happens here and there for sure, but we used to get a lot more of them, and I used to connect to those movies really well. And I love a good father-son story.
Same. But speaking of the soundtrack, obviously Daft Punk were a famous duo for many years, and Kosinski was actually a fan of them, and so he reached out to them, and they actually, ironically, were huge fans of the original Tron. So they were interested in signing on, but they wanted to make sure that the people making it were invested in, honoring the original film, so they had a great meeting. They also met with Hans Zimmer a couple of times, and he basically gave them advice for scoring for their first picture. And obviously you can get some semblances of Hans's electronic influences on this score. And also, there's a third collaborator in this score that doesn't get any recognition at all, and that's Joseph Trapanese. And he's been doing a lot of films lately, but this was his first collaboration on a film. He's a composer, a conductor, and arranger for orchestras and scores. He's actually building himself a good repertoire of filmography lately since this. He also did the animated Tron movie, which came out after this live-action film.
The Raid.
And now Joseph Trapanese, he served as the orchestral arranger and the arranger and the orchestrator. So he was paramount to the orchestral pieces of this film. My guess, I couldn't exactly find the process, but my guess is that Daft Punk would come up with the notes and melodies and themes that they wanted to be orchestral. And basically what Trapanese did as an orchestrator and arranger, you're putting that music onto paper, and you're also working with the orchestra. He's selecting, what instruments are we going to have, how many instruments of each kind of instrument, how many players of each instrument are going to be there, how big is the orchestra going to be. And also there's so many complexities to conducting and arranging that Daft Punk couldn't do because they're not classically trained musicians. You know what I mean? They're great musicians, but it's a completely different beast. So Trapanese was really instrumental, no pun intended, in this score really working. And I think I remember him actually being co-credited maybe early days of the film's release, but he's not credited at all anymore. But he was paramount to the score, ending up working and being completed and actually done with the orchestra.
That's so cool. Thanks for getting his recognition in there.
I love him. He's a really good composer.
Awesome.
He's a very good composer.
There are plenty of cons to this film, though, and obviously we've been talking about the de-aging of Jeff Bridges doesn't hold up so well. Overall, I think the plot is really solid. Sam Flynn, he's kind of like this bad boy
Bruce Wayne
type who kind of just turned to extreme behaviors as a way of rebelling against his duties to his father in a lot of ways, of taking control of Encom, which he refuses to do because he's the largest shareholder. He could take control of Encom, but he doesn't want to, and he's still pissed off about what he thinks happened with his father. Either he's dead or he abandoned him, or he's both. He's probably dead in Costa Rica. He feels like his father abandoned him, but then he accidentally gets sucked into the grid in the secret office that Kevin had under the arcade at Flynn's, and then basically he is on the grid, tries to survive, then has to escape after discovering his father. However, Clue tricked him into going to the grid by sending him that anonymous page, thinking that Sam would assume it was from his father. And now, since he is there, the portal of the grid is opened for 8 hours, and Clue's plan is to enter the portal with an entire army, and he can only do it by using Kevin Flynn's identity disc, which is why he brought Sam there, to lure Kevin out of his exile, to get his disc to then enter the real world and take over the real world.
I also think it's a good plot overall, condensed like that. But just getting there it doesn't quite work most of the time. And I also think that it was a mistake to not reveal the true stakes of what Clue's intentions were until the last 20 minutes of the film, because it's not until 20 minutes into the movie we realize that he has an army prepared to go into the real world. And that's
20 minutes left in the movie.
Yeah, 20 minutes left in the movie, and it's a great conflict, and it really sets up the stakes. But you don't learn this until after 2 hours. So I think that not understanding what the real conflict is, because for the majority of the film, the conflict is just Sam just getting out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And so they're really
that's it.
Yeah,
that's Sam getting out and his father staying.
And then with 20 minutes left, you're like, oh shit, there's a fucking army about to enter the real world. That's really great, but I wish we could have known about that sooner, because it didn't add it didn't add that the suspense and the anxiety and the conflict that we need for the story to be propelled forward. And so if we had learned that pretty early on, maybe at the start of the second act, that really would have added a lot of urgency to the story, I think.
Yeah, I agree for sure, to know what the stakes were for this event going forward. Also, I think just the pacing in general, it starts fine. I think the pacing's solid until about halfway through. Then it really slows itself down immensely. After Sam finds Kevin, basically, he's saved by Cora. But then the second and third act,
dinner.
Yeah, they have this like awkward long dinner. The dinner's fine.
Sitting by the fireplace. It's like 10 minutes of just exposition.
But the
It's too
pacing
much.
for me is really, after that, when they're making a run for the portal, and it really slows down
On the train?
because on that highway
Yeah.
train, have you ever run a freight train or jumped a freight train? It's a cool sequence, and obviously this train is a big reference to the original Tron movie. They have one of those sequences in it, and it really takes it feels like 30 minutes to get to the next phase of this adventure, where it's a way the story slows itself down so that Clue can catch up, and so that Clue can get his plans sent to the audience to let us know what's going on with his plans, his big speech, his big army reveal. They really slow it down to let Clue catch up to them in a lot of ways, I feel like, on purpose. The story does it. It's a tough story to write. There's a lot to get in there. And then eventually, by the time they get to the portal, it feels like another hour, but really it's not. It's just, It feels a lot slower than it is at this point in the movie.
So by the third act, with what's going on, there should be a sense of urgency. But when they're on the train, it's just, and they're just going over memories, and they're just chilling.
Well, they're repairing Cora's arm.
Yeah, but they're just chilling for
And then
15 minutes, and it's like
Kevin's going to knock on the sky, see what he can hear.
Like I said, there's no urgency.
Yeah.
And it's like there should be, at this point, there should be like a ticking clock. Like Chris Nolan.
A ticking clock would have been great.
Chris Nolan, he's so great at adding this ticking clock into his third acts, where there is a time limit for the heroes to achieve their goal. And if they don't achieve that, it's fucked. And that ticking clock is running, and it gets the audience feeling that anxiety. But with them just casually hanging out, it kind of sucks the life out of the film. And it gets rid of any sense of need for any it just takes away the pacing in the balance. It just loses its balance, and then it just kind of falls off this cliff, and it just literally just stops.
It kind of stalls.
And that's not what you want for the third act.
And I understand what they're doing. They're building the connection between Sam and Cora, obviously, for what's going to happen in the climax once they get through the portal. Spoilers alerts, obviously. And Cora's now in the real world. And obviously, Kevin's watching, and I'm trying to create a connection between these two worlds. So you understand what's going on, but I think there's too much going on in a ticking clock. A real ticking clock. There is technically a ticking clock, but it's the slowest clock in the world. It's it's like maple. It's like syrup going uphill, this ticking clock.
You're like, is there a clock? I guess.
So yeah, screenplay, pacing, exposition are some more cons. I also think that there could have been more Rinzler. I think Rinzler is my favorite character in this entire movie. I wish we got a little more of him. Also,
It says 2 lines.
I don't like the user. I fight for the user because he's such a huge part of the original. It's great that he's back. However, Tron is Rinzler for the majority of the film. And then also, I think it could have been a good emotional backdrop of his conflict with trying to defeat his own reprogramming to try to fight for the users again, like he used to. And then kind of just the mystery ending of him falling into the sea of simulation, and that's what it's called. And then his red lights turn blue, meaning he's turned back on as Tron, and then we never see him again. Obviously, they're setting up a sequel here, but I think it would have been a lot better if Rinzler could have came back on as Tron earlier. I think it would have been great. Yeah. More emotional.
You didn't have to hire
connection
the same actor.
You didn't have. Well, but he was still in it. Yeah. And his de-aging looked fine. It was only a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, I think Kevin's a little too passive. I understand his concept in philosophy of defeating Clue is the only way you can defeat Clue is by not playing his game. That's how you win.
Yeah.
I understand the concepts, but it turns Kevin too passive, and he has a bit of a Neo problem, like in Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, where at the end of the Matrix, Neo is the one. He can change the program of the Matrix however he sees fit. He could technically move buildings, rewrite codes. He can do whatever he wants. But Matrix 2 and 3, the Wachowskis, The Matrix is my favorite movie of all time, but they turned him into Superman. That's it. Kind of underwhelming with what he was supposed to be capable of. Same thing with Kevin. He should be capable of Neo-level stuff. We really only get a little tease of it in that nightclub scene where he just like dims the lights and has some people like
Changes the song.
He has his own guards, I guess, come in and defeat the
It's
black
rebels. Yeah.
defeat the Black Guard, and then who are basically the enforcers for Clue. And then we finally actually see some powers from Kevin Flynn, but not until the climax when he's pulling Clue away from the portal and creates a barrier between him and Cora and Sam. I wish we could have got more Kevin fucking shit up being Kevin Flynn. I created this program. I've been here for 20 years.
Yeah.
I've mastered it. I created a 2001: A Space Odyssey home for myself. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And then we don't really get a glimpse of that until the end. I wish we could have got more of that.
I absolutely agree. And there's another thing that I think was a really big missed opportunity that could have been really interesting was pursuing a kind of religious theme in terms of Kevin and Sam in relation to this world on the grid, because you got to think of it as like, it's like God and Jesus are on Earth in a way. You know what I mean? If you're a religious person.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that would have been a really interesting way to explore the story of, programs maybe worshiping them, or there's a religion formed around them. So but think of it like there's a religion formed around their creator, around Kevin Flynn, and then the son of the creator arrives. What would that do to the world?
It is like that.
Yeah.
So this whole film, you can look at it as an allegory for Christianity and references to the Bible. So the programs themselves, not to cut you off, sorry.
That's fine.
Because I think it is there.
You seem like you got something to say.
It is there. So programs basically are created in the image of in likeness of the users of Kevin Flynn. It's just like Christianity and other religions, human beings are created in the image of their creator, their God. However, there's this dimensional plane that is a barrier between the created and the creators. Obviously, we can't access
Heaven and Earth.
Exactly, heaven and earth. There's a barrier between the grid and the real world. So that's an allegory right there. Programs doubt the existence of the users. So Clue, after he's taken over the grid in Tron City, he's convinced the programs that Kevin Flynn was a hack. He was just a dictator. He's not really our God. And also making them doubt the existence that users even exist, because they kind of don't believe in users anymore until Rinzler sees the blood fall from Sam. And then people find like, oh my God, it's a user? Users are real? So kind of Clue has convinced them that users don't exist, because you can say that, like you said, Kevin Flynn can be looked at as God. Clue can be looked at as Satan, as the devil, as the fallen angel. So we have also a purge of the ISOs. Now the ISOs you could look at as the religious worshippers or fanatics of Kevin Flynn. They were the miraculous digital beings that just sprang into fruition, that no one created. They just appeared out of nowhere, out of thin air in the grid. But they basically you could look at as the worshippers in a way to Kevin Flynn. And that's why Clue destroyed them, because not only was his programming by Kevin told to delete any imperfections, but also the ISOs were not perfect. They were flawed because they were basically organic beings, you could say, created from nowhere. But you could say that they were the followers of Kevin Flynn. So obviously Satan had to destroy them. Now God and Satan, Kevin and Clue, they are in a never-ending standoff on this plane. Basically, you could say for the souls of the programs, the souls of the ISOs. They're in a standoff, just like so many allegories, so many movies, books, stories about God and Satan. They're at a never-ending standoff. Like Constantine says that, like, they're in a never-ending war for the souls of mankind. Like John Constantine says something like that in the movie. Also, we have the creator living amongst his created. Obviously, he's in exile, and then eventually sacrificing himself. However, it's a little different here, where if you look at Sam as a Jesus character, obviously in Christianity, God sent Jesus to earth to sacrifice himself basically and die for the sins of humanity. Whereas here, Satan or Clue tricks Sam, the son of God, Jesus basically, to come to the grid. So it's a little different circumstance of why he's there. and you don't really exactly know what his role would be since he was tricked by Satan versus being sent by God, if that makes sense. So in a way, the allegory of Christianity is very much present in other religions in Tron Legacy the whole time. And plus, the rebellion of Satan was never an attempt, as it usually is believed, to overthrow God, but more it occurred because God ordered them to worship humanity, a lower life form, just like Kevin had Clue. Like, you have to worship the ISOs. They are the miracle, where Clue is like, fuck them. They are imperfect beings. I'm going to destroy them. So I think the allegories are there.
I think they're there, but I'm just speaking of like the fact that it would have been interesting if there was like a religious group.
I think that's there in previous stories of Tron, like the comic books and the cartoons and the features. I think that's there, but like not in this movie, obviously. But it's Kevin. I mean, Clue stamped it all out.
I think it would have been interesting, and it also could have pitted, Clue against Kevin in a way where Kevin has a following that to go up against Clue in a way on the grid. You know what I mean?
So that's present, but just exposition. So he says that Cora says that he did fight back against Clue, but,
You're right,
but every time he would go against Clue, he would lose, and Clue would just get bigger. So I think because there's a couple animated features as well as comics and stories of Tron that progresses the lore since 1982's Tron, and this is kind of just like a continuation of all that. That's all in there. It's just not really in the movie. There's just a couple lines here and there.
They should have made this movie.
That would have been cool as hell.
Yeah, it sounds
I
way
agree.
better.
That would have been awesome.
That should have been the movie. Yeah.
The war of Kevin versus Clue.
Yeah.
And throw Sam in there as well. Why not?
And I think Sam, it could have been interesting if he was like a Jesus type figure who ends up sacrificing himself at the end, and then he's brought back to life and resurrected as a program version of himself.
I think that
would have been fucking sick.
I bet that was an original idea, but I feel like this is when Disney was starting to like eliminate obvious thematic elements and motifs of religion in their films, and obviously it's completely disappeared.
But that would have been, imagine, that would have been so cool if he died. And it would have been really tragic, but then he was resurrected as a program Kevin, a program Sam.
That would have been sick.
And then Neo. He could have been like all powerful and shit.
Would have been Neo.
And it could have been him versus Clue in the finale. Missed opportunity.
That sounds like a great movie.
Sounds fantastic.
Sounds like an awesome movie.
And I think that speaking about all the how you said that the war of the past was explained through the stories, I think that this film relies too heavily on exposition. People like to make fun of like Nolan for exposition, but like, dude, Nolan movies don't even come close to the amount of exposition on this film. And I mean, the first 15 minutes of the movie is all exposition, and then we get that huge sequence of exposition with Kevin when he's talking to Sam in his home. We get exposition from Clue. We get more exposition on the train. Zeus gives exposition. Like, there's too much spoon feeding of the audience, of explaining things, of telling characters about other people, and telling Sam so much stuff. There's not enough action. There's not enough. None of things are told through doing, rather. You know what I mean? Which I think ends up being stronger storytelling. There's just way too many scenes of a character explaining things to Sam, and I know that happens a lot in The Matrix, but in The Matrix it never feels like it's too much, and it always feels balanced with action. And in a lot of ways,
interesting concepts and sequences.
Yeah, interesting concepts. But so take, for example, like Neo's rebirth in the real world. That's all done, and it's not like spoon-fed to us. I mean, there's just too much exposition, I think, in this film, especially in the third act of the film, where it really should just be all the events led up to this third act, which should just be propulsive and very interesting and lacking in more stories being told by other characters.
Yeah, I think a war would have been such a great third act versus just a race to a door in a lot of ways, which is fine. I mean, you could argue that The Matrix is a race to the door at the end as well, to the room.
It is, but it's fucking awesome.
It's fucking sick. Now, that's interesting you say that it relates to the pacing, because the first hour has plenty of action. I mean, it opens up with a lot of action after the flashback. We get, the older Hutter, Sam Flynn now.
So you're saying the kid was hot?
He's just like, no, he's older now.
You said older and Hutter.
Got him.
Canceled.
What was that thing you like? I said something unsavory like in person last week, and Anthony, the best reference I've ever heard in my life from anyone in person. He did a Wolf of Wall Street reference where Jordan's trying to bribe the FBI agents on the yacht. Anthony comes to me, he's like, he steps closer to me gently. He's like, "Can you say that again?" Exactly like you said it.
It was something cancelable.
Exactly like that.
And so I've never done that reference before, and
So good.
like right when you said it, it clicked in my head, and I even did like Kyle Shannon. I acted exactly like him physically.
Say it again. Exactly like that. It was so goddamn funny. It was the best movie reference I've ever heard in my life. It was nailed it, man. But what was I saying before I got to that?
How hot he was.
Okay. No, so I like
And
how
Garrett Hedlund's awesome.
he's a great actor.
Yeah.
I think that
I love him.
I think he has so much potential as a leading man. I'm disappointed it didn't really fully work out for him since
Did
this
not.
movie because I think he has it for me.
Yeah, right now his only major role is he's on that Sylvester Stallone show.
Not the reality show.
No, the gangster
No,
gangster
kidding.
show. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So he plays a recurring role. He's also been in a couple of movies here and there.
A couple Coen Brothers
Yeah,
movies.
but he hasn't. He didn't work out as a leading man.
I think it's because this
unfortunately.
movie wasn't a huge hit.
was a
That's
bomb.
probably
Yeah, it was a
why.
bomb.
It was just like a very lukewarm box office for its budget. But I think he's solid as Sam Flynn, and I like Sam Flynn as a character a lot. I like the rebellious nature of him and the bad boy antics of the annual prank on Encom, the company that he has the large share of. That obviously at the end of Tron in 1982, if you've never seen it, I'm going to spoil the ending of it. Kevin Flynn gets control of the company as CEO after it's revealed that Edward Dellinger, who stole his games that he was developing at night at Encom, took his credit, but basically was proven to be a liar and basically cheated Kevin Flynn, and Kevin Flynn gets CEO of Encom. Then obviously he disappears. Now, Sam Flynn is still suffering from the loss of his father. Like I said, he thinks he either abandoned him or died, or probably both. He's probably dead in Costa Rica right now. And instead of taking control of Encom, which is his birthright, he just spends his allowance. He's very much, like you said, Bruce Wayne in a lot of ways without fighting crime. And he takes to extreme sports, doing crazy things. Annual pranks at Encom. There's a past story of at Encom he did a prank where he like parachuted down into one of their conferences and did something crazy. So this is like what he does with his free time. He's very immature right now because of his father's disappearance, and it's really not until he connects with his father again that he gets motivated. And by the end of the film, it's taking control of Encom again, which is a great ending, I think. But the character I think is solid, and he's not so much different from Kevin Flynn because Kevin himself, in the past, in Tron himself, was like a bit of a B&E breaking and entering guy, kind of hacking the system sort of personality. They just took it to an extreme, I think, with Sam.
Yeah, I agree. And although he does make the decision halfway through the film to go to the portal on his own and find Zeus, which is great because it's your lead character being active. But I do think that so my biggest problem with the film is the writing and it's the screenplay. Otherwise, it could that's what I think it was lacking in potential. And he kind of does become a bit of a passive character where he's brought to location to location to location. I think it would have been much more interesting if Sam made the decision to enter the grid. If he knew what the light laser was and he's like, fuck it, I'm going in. Rather than him being put into it by accident. It wasn't an active choice. He's just like playing around on the computer, accidentally gets put into the grid. I think it would have been like it would have made him much more interesting and made him an active character because he's accidentally put in there, then he's picked up, and then he goes through the gladiator games, which is great. I love the sequence, and then he's picked up by Cora, and then we get the him and Kevin uniting. And obviously he makes some decisions in the third act, but I think half the time he's a little too passive for a lead character, and it kind of hinders him in his development. And
Yeah.
he could have been much more exciting.
Maybe if he was seeking out the grid on purpose, trying to find his father.
I like that.
Versus Alan's the only one who believes that his father's still around. Like, Alan, you're acting like I'm going to find him there sitting there working like hasn't left the job. Alan's like, wouldn't that be something? Maybe if Sam was like more active and like, I'm going to find my father. He's out there somewhere. I got to find the grid. I got to figure out how to access it. And then he eventually finds the secret door. But I think it still works. I think it still works fine with the angst of the feeling of abandonment of his father, not understanding why he left him if he did leave him and disappeared. Because, I mean, if I was Sam, I'd probably feel like that for a while too, but also, maybe I would also realize, like, there's no way my father would just abandon me. There's got to be a reason why he's gone.
You can compare it to The Matrix, because The Matrix has a similar thing of someone entering a computer program, or he thinks he really is exiting it, but he thinks he's entering it. You know what I mean? At first, Neo.
So the real world is the program.
Yeah, exactly. But in his mind, he's entering something. But the thing is, he's given the hint, a couple of hints. He gets the call from Morpheus. He gets the text on his computer. He follows the White Rabbit. He talks to Trinity. Ultimately, he makes the decision to find out what the Matrix is. They could have done something very similar with Sam here, of breadcrumbs and hints of the grid, and treat the grid, make it like Neo to the Matrix, like Sam to the grid. It could have been much more interesting, where he's given hints and he's given little things here and there, and ultimately he has to make the decision to enter this new world. I think it's a little too accidental and happenstance, and I think that's ultimately the wrong decision for the character. It would have, he is a very cool character, riding a motorcycle and causing mayhem and just being really cool. He's a cool guy, but he's not active enough for me to really love as much as I could have. But imagine that if he was learning things and he's been investigating it. He's heard about the Matrix. He's been questioning something, and he's given the opportunity to say yes or no, and he says yes. And so I think Sam I think it would have worked better if he was given an opportunity. Okay, the grid's real. Do you want to take the chance and enter it? I think that would have been a lot more fun.
I like that because he knows it's real.
Yeah.
His father's been
telling him about it for years.
Told him about it every time he tucked him into bed. Telling him about the grid. He's been giving speeches about it. That makes sense.
It kind of seems a little like weird that he immediately, like, without question, is like, my dad ran off. Like, he's been telling you that he's been working on the grid, inside the grid. Like, maybe he's stuck in there.
Yeah, I think it seems like because he's a smart kid. He's precocious. He was top of his class. He was top of his class at Caltech before he dropped out. So he's tech savvy. He's probably a genius like his father too.
It seems like an obvious thing. Like, oh, he must be stuck there somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been inside of this computer 8 hours a day, every day. Like, maybe he's stuck.
Where's he been going every night? I wonder.
So I think that it would have been a much stronger first act if they kind of borrowed a little bit more from The Matrix.
I think so too, because it borrows too much from Tron, the original, where like accidentally getting stuck inside the Tron, in the grid the whole time.
It's better for Tron because it is fish out of water.
Yeah, it's the first time.
It's all surprising, shocking. I think it works in the original film, but the audience already knows what it is. So we don't need to have the mystery again.
But I will give Disney, this is probably definitely one of their better, if not best,
remakes?
Legacy sequel, remake, reboot, remake, whatever you want to call it. It's a legacy sequel, basically.
Yeah.
But they haven't really nailed it like this much since then. Because I still, even though we're kind of like being pretty critical of it, it's because I think we love it so much. And I think it's because this movie had so much potential to be a generational, almost like Matrix level movie. Not quite there because it's so rare to be a movie like that, but like it has the makings of a really,
it had some juice, man.
Really special science fiction film. It has it all there. But how about let's run to our intermission and we'll come back and talk more about Tron Legacy.
Let's do it.
Now, before we continue, the very best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to leave a 5-star review on either Spotify or Apple, aka iTunes. Now, Apple gives you the ability to leave a 5-star written review as well, which we love to read those off. I'll read one off in about a minute or so. But both platforms give you the ability to leave us a 5-star review. We're at like over 1,700 on both platforms, so get those numbers up for us. We'd love to hit 2,000 by the end of the year. The second best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. This is a membership program. We have 5 different tiers of financial support for the show: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100. Every single one of these tiers gets you awesome perks like video messages. You get access to 2 weekly bonus episodes every single tier. So the weekly chat, which is exclusively on Patreon only, posts every Wednesday for every single patron. Also, an additional bonus episode of the show posts every Friday or Thursday for every patron access as well. So every patron has access to 2 episodes extra a week of Raiders of the Lost podcast. I mean, come on, that's quite the
For
fucking
less than a cup of coffee.
Less than a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee.
That $10 tier gets you access to our Discord. The $25 tier gets you a custom episode. $100 is the craziest package of all time. You get so many cool perks like free merch, but also you get to a private watch party. Whatever movie you want to watch with us, we'll watch it. It'll be great, as well as coming on the show after 3 months for a fun guest segment. Pop you in for the intermission. Have a good chat. It's always fun. So thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. You mean the world to us, as well as everyone else. You all mean the world to us too.
This episode is also sponsored by our friends at movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Be sure to use our promo code Raiders10 at movieposters.com to get 10% off your order right now. They have a huge selection, pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable in their poster library, as well as all sorts of sizes, framing, and backlighting. They also just did a movie poster giveaway contest for us last week. Congratulations to the winner of that free movie poster. We're going to do another contest next week, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, go to movieposters.com for all of your poster needs. And don't forget to use our promo code Raiders10 for 10% off. 10% off your order today.
10% off. 10% off.
It's extra off.
Super pop off. Let's move on into our intermission now and begin with the movie quote competition. Now, I think you'll get this pretty easy, but give everyone a moment. You want to be fooled, but you wouldn't clap yet because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it back.
That would be a cuh from The Prestige.
Yes, sir. You have to bring it back.
I saw you on a slab. I lied. It was agony.
It was like going home.
All right, here's my quotes. Two people. If I told you don't think about the color red, what would you think about? Sex.
Don't think about the color.
Might be a tough one. I'll say it. If I told you don't think about the color red, what would you think about? Sex.
I don't know.
40 Days and 40 Nights with Josh Hartnett.
Haven't seen that one in a while.
Yeah. Brought it back to the 2000s.
That feather scene is hot.
What's the feather scene?
Where he's obviously celibate for 40 days, 40 nights,
yeah.
and he's got a crush on that girl, and they're being intimate without actually physically touching each other.
Oh, yeah.
And so they have like a feather that they're just like, oh,
Shannon Salzman.
feels so good, that feather.
Man.
All right, guess this movie release year. Crazy Heart.
2007.
2009.
Oh, damn. Oscar win. It's a great role.
Jeff Bridges is great.
Right.
Great singer and guitarist.
Mm-hmm. All right. Guess this movie release year. Pearl Harbor.
2002.
2001. Close. Oh, also, Crazy Heart was Scott Cooper's first movie.
Was it his first?
Yeah, it's his debut.
It's a great debut.
Yeah. Jeff Bridges likes working with first-time directors.
I know, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, movie pop quiz time. Yeah, and I believe True Grit was the Coen brothers' first movie. Movie pop quiz time. In 2006, Joseph Kosinski made an ad for a famous action-adventure video game. What was the game franchise?
Gears of War, baby.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Gears of War. And it was
Hell or High Water was another debut.
Oh, was
Jeff
it?
Bridges. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Tyler Sheridan, his first movie.
Oh.
As a director. Yeah.
Or maybe
He fucking loves first-time directors. I bet I can find a huge list of them. Sorry, what were you saying? Gears of War.
Gears of,
Kosinski. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he made the, it was a famous ad.
It had the song Mad World.
Yeah. It was for Xbox 360.
Mad
Yeah.
World.
Yeah.
Dun, dun,
That was the
dun,
big
dun,
one, I
dun,
think,
dun.
for him, for his career. All right. What was Josh Hartnett's first ever role? First ever role.
Wow, first ever role.
There's actually, surprisingly, for your first role, it's fucking big time, man. I can't believe this. It's his first ever job as an actor. It's not even like his IMDb has him as like guest spots on TV shows and commercials. Like, this is his first credit as
And
an
it's
actor.
not The Faculty?
No. But The Faculty, it was not long after this. He had a huge early 5 years of his career.
Good question. I don't know. What is it?
Halloween H2O.
Oh, shit.
No, that was his first movie. That was his first job as an actor.
Wow.
It's great. Like, that's your first credit? That's insane.
That's good credit. Do we have any Raiders? Actually, I got another name suggestion from somebody for that. So they tweeted us. Let me pull it up real quick. They said, I love Raider haters, but what about, okay, this is from Film Bro 25. Raider haters is a classic, but what if you call them haters of the Lost Podcast?
I like that too. Haters of the Lost Podcast.
We can do both.
That's great.
That's so funny.
We just recorded yesterday. I thought I had one today. I thought I screenshotted one.
Well, I have a couple unsubscribed. So we actually just got threads. I think everyone else got it too, and we got a bunch of people just writing unsubscribe on comments. Like I wrote, like, hey, Threads, we're a movie TV podcast. Find us on every platform. Blah 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 blah. And then William Henry Gleave wrote unsubscribed.
I found them. I accidentally deleted them earlier today.
How could you?
I said accidentally. Jeez Louise, man. Okay, ready? These are actually pretty good. These are great.
Who's Louise?
Shut up. All right, Curtis Henry wrote, because we talked about Clinton. You said he was 90. You said he was 92 years old in the movie news. And then Curtis Henry sent us a screenshot of just Google search of Clint Eastwood. It said 93 years old. He wrote 92 question mark? Unsubscribed. You didn't do your research, did you? You don't know anything. Eric Rems wrote, I just listened to Letterboxd recap humming the Pink Panther to introduce Jaws. Unsubscribed. Must have sounded like it. Didn't sound like Pink Panther, I think.
Yeah. Your tune humming isn't always on.
I'm a tone deaf human being, so
like when you did the Succession one, I'm like, what are you doing over there?
In my head it sounds fine, but I don't think it sounds fine when other people hear it.
It doesn't.
Next up, NR Rock wrote in our Succession episode, no mention of the funniest character in the show, Carl. Unsubscribed. We didn't even talk about Carl, or we barely touched on Frank too. That's it.
There's so many to talk about. We managed to make a 2-hour episode out of that, which is wild.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Wild Stallions.
All right, a couple of great 5-star reviews. Here's one from The Silly Boy on Apple. And again, to leave a review on Apple, all you need is an email address, even if you don't use iTunes. I love these guys. Anyway, I found these guys doing 2020 during 2020, but didn't start listening all the time until last year. But I love how much they have such a passion and knowledge for film. It makes me love it even more. The ways that they talk about film has taught me how to love film more.
Aw, that's great.
P.S. My sister laughs at me because I do you guys about random crap. The ways you care about your fans is amazing.
Aw, we appreciate you, pal.
Thank you, silly boy. We appreciate the 5-star review. We really appreciate you tuning in. And you know what? Hey, we appreciate it even if your sister laughs at you.
All sisters laugh at their brothers, so it's okay.
We don't have any sisters, though, so we wouldn't know.
I'm guessing they do at some point. They have to.
My streaming recommendation for this week for this episode, is a movie that we're actually going to go see in theaters tomorrow at the New Beverly Cinema on 35mm film. Minority Reports. It's on Hulu, if you got that, or rent it. It's just an awesome, still relevant science fiction adventure mystery film from Steven Spielberg starring Tom Cruise. Awesome cast.
Goats doing goat
it's
things.
So good. It still holds up, man.
Yeah, it's based on a Philip K. Dick short story.
Cannot wait to see it in theaters.
Because
we saw it when we were like 14 in theaters, but since then haven't.
That was in 2002.
Was it that old? 2002, so we were 11
yeah,
or 12.
That movie's over 20 years old, man. 23 years old. Wait, no, 21 years old. Yeah, 21.
There you go.
Math's been a while.
Math is hard.
My recommendation for this week, for this episode, is Thief, Michael Mann's incredible debut, speaking of debuts. And it's available on Amazon Prime right now, starring James Caan. And it's one of the most incredible crime films of all time. It's really set the stage for Michael Mann as one of the most remarkable American filmmakers in history. If you haven't seen it, get on that ASAP. Thief on Amazon Prime.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Freaking awesome movie.
Frickin'.
Now, let's frickin' get back into TRON Legacy. I want to talk about some great things, all right? We've been a little critical.
We've been bashing it.
We've been tearing it apart. You tear my heart apart, Lisa. You
tear me apart.
But it's because this movie has the juice, man. It's there. It's got a cult following, and I fucking love this movie still. And I think it has some of my favorite action sequences I've seen in
the light cycle fight is fucking
great. The
great.
entire arena is great.
Yeah.
And I think they do a good job getting the audience ready to accept Sam as a great athlete and just good at doing extreme things, because he jumps off a goddamn building, parachutes, he rides a motorcycle off a ramp on a highway. So we get great exposition of him being just great at doing wild stuff.
You have to have that setup, for sure.
So we find out he's a great athlete, he's brave, he's an adrenaline junkie, which you need to survive in the arena. And it sets us up to accept him for...
They should have had a frisbee scene, though.
Like a beach frisbee scene.
What's that game called that you used to play? Ultimate Frisbee?
Yeah, him playing Ultimate with a bunch of other dudes wearing Santa Monica t-shirts.
That would have been great. Then it could be like, okay, I accept this guy kicking ass at disc.
Because you need to accept that he can do these things. And they do a solid job letting us know that he can, because even though he's a fish out of water, he's never done anything like this before. He's played the video games of disc battle and light cycle video games, but now to be put in the arena, it's such a cool couple, like 10 minutes of him getting picked up by the ship, getting put into the armory, getting armored up. It's pretty funny. It's got a zipper when the girls are like lighting his clothes on fire to tear him apart.
They're not girls, they're programs.
The
Jesus
female programs. Gets his identity disc, and he's going into the arena. He's going into this gladiatorial battle. I wish there was another sequence of this, because I thought it was so cool. And so basically, the first sequences he's doing is he's in the disc battle, and he's going against an action figure of his, a fighter in the Tron game. And I got a 3-inch version of you on my bureau in my room. That's crazy. And Sam's pretty good. He outsmarts his first opponents, and then the second opponent he also outsmarts, but also, I'm escaping. I'm getting out of here. He breaks the glass, falls through, even though, so now he's like 2 rounds in, but then he accidentally stumbles upon the final round against Rinzler. And this is such a cool sequence of him versus Rinzler, because Rinzler is such a badass. This song is awesome. Like, this is one of my favorite gym songs. Yeah, not bad. Better than the Succession one.
You act like you're great at it.
I never said I was, but also I don't do it as often.
Yeah, you do. Sometimes I have to get you to stop singing.
But this sequence is awesome, because Rinzler is such a badass, and I love the gravity shifts of the arena.
Yeah,
and I think it's just a blast. It's so much fun, but it's really important because Rinzler sees Sam bleed, but it shows you that Sam is kind of a match for Rinzler to an extent. You know, even though Rinzler outsmarts him, he kind of outsmarts Rinzler too in breaking the glass, and they kind of have a little standoff.
I will say, as the first time I saw the film, I was confused about Rinzler being Tron.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that.
For me, I was like, wait, is that when Kevin says Tron, he's like, Tron, when he sees Rinzler, I was like, oh, that's Tron?
I didn't realize that until then, but I believe it's also related to, so when Tron, before he was reprogrammed into Rinzler, he was hiding as he was hiding himself with this new outfit with the all black mask and helmet to hide from Clue, even though I believe he lost the fight to Clue but escaped in the past.
Dude, this sounds like way better than this. Like, they should have done that for the movie.
So Tron was hiding incognito, and then he got captured by Clue again and then reprogrammed. I believe that's what happened to Tron.
Gotcha.
So even though it's ambiguous what happened to him, you think he got killed by Clue in the flashback sequence that when Kevin's telling Sam what happened.
Yeah, when Kevin runs away, yeah.
I believe that Tron went into hiding and then got captured and turned into Rinzler. But I think that it's great that Tron is Rinzler.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's awesome.
It's one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah. I think it's great too.
But I just wish I wanted more Rinzler. I wanted, because he could add so much emotional depth to Kevin Flynn and to the struggle between Kevin and Clue.
They could have like captured him, and Rinzler's like, "Fuck you," and Kevin's like, "You're Tron, man. We're buds."
Yeah, that would have worked great, man.
You know what I mean?
I know. No, I love the Jeff Bridges impression. Yeah.
Far out, man.
Someone ruined one of the lines.
Man. Yeah, she fucking ruined it. She couldn't help herself.
When Clue the flashback sequence where it's explaining what happened to him and Clue and the digital frontier and the grid when it's Tron, Clue, and Kevin creating a utopia together.
You're standing in downtown.
And Clue is like starting to get control basically. And he yells at Kevin, "Am I still to create the perfect system?" And then Jeff Bridges' character, Kevin, goes, "Yeah?" In like the most Jeff Bridges voice.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's really, but someone said it
Before he said it.
Yeah, and I'm like, why are you ruining the movie?
She said it during the moment, during like the beat of silence, and it's like, come on, just wait for him to say it.
You're not in your living room.
Yeah, come on.
I get it.
agree.
You've seen Tron Legacy before.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yeah, I agree. I was like, come on, you ruined the
I was
joke.
waiting for
you
it,
ruined
too.
it.
It's a funny line. It really is.
They needed attention, man.
But I think the concept of Rinzler, Tron being turned into Rinzler, is freaking awesome. I think it's great. And I wish
Freaking awesome, man. That's your word today. It's freaking awesome, man.
I just wanted more Rinzler outside awesome action sequences. Yeah, I think he could have added a lot more emotional.
Yeah, but for action sequences, the flight battle in the third act is really fantastic. But man, the light cycle battle is amazing,
Unbelievable.
Like I was mouth agape watching this in the theater last week, and it's so well done. The sound effects, the visual effects, it's the music. Holy crap! And then the design of the environment, the different levels, the ramps, the speed ups, the tunnels. Man, I was just so blown away by the light cycle battle, and it was, for me, it's the show-stopping sequence of the film, and it just blew my expectations out of the water from my memory of it, and I found that to be, without a doubt, my favorite part of the film.
And I think it's followed by maybe the best shot in the movie, where the light cycle battle is after Rinzler brings Sam to Clue, and Clue's like, obviously the scene's great because Sam thinks that Clue is his father. And Clue is playing around with it at first. He's playing coy, like, doesn't say I'm not your father yet. He's just trying to get some different. Yeah. I've been waiting a long time for you. Sam, yeah.
Far out, man.
Far out. Yes, I see you too. I'm really glad you're here. Then he reveals that he's not his father and that he's Clue. Well, Sam realizes that he is Clue. And then they go into the light cycle arena and they go against each other. But who is Sam going up against? Clue. And that great shot. Basically,
man.
He's the new god of Tron City. He's worshipped, and he steps out of the ship.
Fireworks.
And he walks around down the arena. Yeah, the fireworks shot of Clue walking. It is insane. I love that shot so much. It's so badass, and I think it's incredible. And then, obviously, like you said, the light cycle sequence is a show-stopping scene. It's astounding what they were able to accomplish visual effects-wise compared to the original Tron as well as the video game, because the original Tron looked very much like the video game Tron light cycle version, the arcade game. And it's obviously back then in 1982 was really incredible effects, but when you look at it now, it's very crude. But what they were able to create aesthetically and imagine what the light cycles would look like if they were tangible and you can really see them, really, really incredible stuff. And I just love Sam running and breaking apart the baton, which becomes the light cycle. And then later on, that becomes the flying ships for the Blackguard and Clue later on.
So Tron was actually created by Steven Lisberger. He was actually from Philadelphia, but he located to Boston in the 70s to pursue a career in computer animation. And he had very little competition in operating this industry in the East Coast because nobody back then did Hollywood stuff on the East Coast. And so there's no competition for anyone telling stories like that for him. And so he created some concept work, sent it to Disney, and Disney greenlit the Tron film. So this guy from Philadelphia, he created like the first ever pieces of Tron in Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston kid.
Fucking Boston guy.
Yeah, kid. Love
and
to hear it.
And the writers spoke with him as an advisor for the story of this film.
And I love earlier how you brought up the fact that Clue and Kevin are mirrors of each other, obviously, because Clue, basically what he is a program, stands for Codified Likeness Utility. He was a hacker program written by Kevin Flynn and played by Jeff Bridges, obviously. Clue looked just like his user, Flynn, but talked in a very different voice than his human counterpart. He's one of the few characters in the Tron universe to have yellow circuitry. The reason for this is the design of programs in Tron. Free and usually benevolent programs were blue and white, and while those under the control of the MCP were orange-red. Clue was created outside of the system by coding and technology of Kevin Flynn, and therefore not a free program, in the game grid or under the MCP, and is differentiated in this movie by the color yellow. So it's either blue or orange for everybody else, but Clue is yellow. Now, Clue was designed to create the perfect system. However, this philosophy, which Kevin admits to Clue later on in the film in the third act, is an imperfect system, because imperfection, that is the beauty of creation, is the imperfection. And he really admits to Clue that you didn't do anything wrong, because I'm the one who's at fault. I'm responsible for the genocide of the ISOs because
It's not your fault, Clue.
Yeah,
it's not your fault.
It's not your fault, Clue. Don't say that.
It's not your fault.
Don't say
Clue.
that, Kevin. Not you too. Not you too, Kevin. So basically, I love this moment for Kevin because he admits that it's all because of him. He created Clue in his own likeness, arrogantly, before he knew the truth about perfection and imperfection. He's at fault. He's the reason why the ISOs got destroyed. He really is, and I think he really understands that at the end. He's probably been dealing with that, which is why he's gone to this Zen version of himself. Hey, you're messing up my Zen thing, man. To try to, deal with the fact that he's done this. He's created all this destruction as well as all this life. And I think that's a great character moment for Kevin to admit that it's not Clue's fault. You did what I told you to do. It's my fault.
And also, one of my favorite aspects to the film is the idea of Kevin says to Sam, Clue's plan of entering the real world is based on the theory that if we can come here, why can't they go there? And I think that's a really terrific setup for the eventual conflict of the end of the film. And I really love the idea of programs entering the real world. And we obviously get that with Olivia Wilde's character Cora entering the real world with Sam at the end of the film, which I really love. I like the ending a lot. And I thought it was one of the more interesting aspects to the story that they got in there was programs wanting to enter the real world, and what would that be like, and how would that translate into real world physics and the ships and vehicles and weaponry that they've developed on the grid are probably fiercely powerful in the real world, which really adds stakes to it. So I like the aspect, and it really opened the door at the end of the film to have an interesting sequel of more programs entering the real world. I remember when the credits rolled, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see what else they do to it, but they obviously never did anything. I'm sure Ares might explore that for sure. Tron Ares.
Jared Leto. I am a Tron. I am a program.
It's Tron in time.
It's Tron in time.
So I think that would be it's an interesting concept that I hope they explore in the next film.
I hope they do back and forth between being on the grid,
Yeah.
being in the Tron system, and being in the real world. I think that's something that could have benefited Tron Legacy, is a little more time in the real world. I think the concepts there are strong. And when you spend so much time there in the first act, then you're just there permanently. It's too similar to Tron, the original.
You could have like a hacker in the real world helping Sam out in different ways.
Yeah, I think it would have been cool to see a little more of Cillian Murphy's character, who's basically the head software programming or engineer of Encom right now, as well as maybe a back and forth between him and Sam. Maybe they're rivals somehow, because I think obviously the Tron system is so fascinating to explore what Kevin Flynn created, this digital universe, digital environment created to basically be a Newtonian playground to experiment and basically challenge the ideas of reality, existence. He says he's going to change the world. Every concept we've ever had about religion, technology, the existence of God, it's all going to change forever because of the Tron system and the grid. And so I think it's really fascinating to spend a lot of time there, but also our world's just as fascinating. And I think it's just as important to the Tron system to explore both worlds, I think, equally together. I think that's something that Tron Ares, I think, can benefit from, is if not the entire film basically taking place on the grid, but kind of back and forth at the same time, like going in and out of the program.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could have been interesting to have communications between Sam and another character in the real world.
And I know,
like someone who's on his side helping.
Yeah, and like you keep bringing up, there's so many similarities between this and The Matrix, and obviously you don't want movies to copy each other, but you can't help it sometimes. And I feel like you're right. If they took more from the Matrix, because one of the great strengths of the Matrix is we're not in the Matrix the whole time. We're in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out 4 or 5 times. I think that's very beneficial to the storytelling of such a complex idea. I think that Tron Legacy could have benefited from a little more in and out of the program itself.
I keep thinking of Clockwork Orange when you say that.
Get really old in and out. But I do love being on the grid. It's so incredible and fascinating, and I like how time is different there, how it goes through cycles versus obviously the way we experience time. In our world, Tron City is a great concept as well. Just basically a world within our world, and I love exploring it. And even though like Tron Ares is already turning into kind of an internet meme, because I think anything Jared
because
Leto
of us.
No, not us. It's already out there as like a meme. Like anything Jared Leto's in because of Morbius is like turning into a meme.
Yeah.
I'm still really excited about it because I think there's still so much to explore in the world of Tron, and I think they could make something really cool and special. I think this movie is special, but really for just the cult followers and the people that really love it. And it does have so much potential. It had so much potential. It's almost a really great film, but I still think it's fascinating. I still really love revisiting this movie in this world.
So the director of Tron Ares is Joachim Ronning, Swedish it looks like, from Oslo. So yeah, he's Swedish. Oh no, Norwegian, I'm sorry. He's actually a pretty good director. He's made Kon-Tiki, which is a good film. But he also did Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which is, I would say, probably the weakest of the franchise. And then Maleficent, the sequel Maleficent. So he has experience in big budget filmmaking, and so he's right now in pre-production on Tron Ares. So we'll see going forward the strength of him as a filmmaker. And then the writers of the film. 1 second while I pull this up. Steven Lisberger, obviously creator of Tron, and then Bonnie MacBird. What is Bonnie written? Bonnie is written. So Tron Uprising, the TV series, and the original Tron, which is cool. So going back to the original writers, because with this film, they actually got TV writers, 2 guys I had never heard of, Adam Horowitz and Edward Kitsis.
The guy from Lost.
Yeah, so Adam Horowitz wrote for Lost for a while as a writer's room writer, and then also he's credited on 20 episodes as a writer. So they got the job because they were super fans of Tron, but they aren't the best writers. There's the thing with like the J.J. Abrams school of filmmaking. He keeps producing like
mystery box guys,
and then like writers and filmmakers who just don't really have the stuff, but they got hired on Lost, or they got hired on the Jennifer Garner show, and then J.J. helped bring them up the ranks in Hollywood. Alias, thank you. And I don't think I've seen any of his proteges really being strong filmmakers or writers in their own right. Damon Lindelof is the most successful, but I mean he's kind of messed up some things I really love. So I would say Damon Lindelof is probably the best of them all, but like still, I'm not really a huge fan of Lindelof.
So I think when it comes to the writing of Tron Legacy, I think they do a great job building the lore and the concepts, the themes, whether it's the grid itself, Tron City, the ISOs, identity discs, the recognizers, which are the big shifts. And I think they do a great job world building and concept building with this film. There's a lot they have to get in there. There's a lot they have to explain. This is a world that most people don't really know anything about when the first time they saw it. Sure, plenty of people saw Tron in 1982, but that was freaking 30 years before this movie came out. And I'm sure a lot of people aged out of, if they even remember seeing that movie back then.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people, it's just new people who never even saw the original, but they still really like this movie. So they had to make this movie for people they were expected who probably didn't see the original, and then also make it exciting, as well as explaining so many new concepts and just new verbiage and jargon for this this digital frontier, this digital plane. Everything about this world they have to build out as well, because the concept was to make sequels and obviously build a franchise out of this, which it's taken 13 years to make a sequel to this movie, which is filming soon. It's supposed to start filming in August 2023. Hopefully it happens, but it took that long to make a sequel to Tron Legacy, so it's almost half the time in between the first two movies.
Also, I forgot another major Jeff Bridges first-time director.
Who?
Tron. Silly old me. I didn't even put that together.
So I think the writers were really great at writing the exposition of the world building, if that makes sense. But then when it came to executing a great story for the entirety of this 2 hour and 20-minute runtime, wasn't quite there for the second act going into the third act. That transition, it really drops the momentum of the film. And then I feel like they tried to rush an exciting climax at the end. I love the aerial battle. It's so cool. But it's a way to warm you up for the big finale.
Yeah.
So I think that the rising tension is the biggest pitfall of this film, where the rising tension,
The falling tension.
it turns into intense falling drop of tension. So they lose all of the momentum and tension they've built, and then they try to salvage it. They do a pretty good job. I still like the ending of this movie.
Yeah, it was a good ending.
And I love the finale. I love the real ending where Cora's on Earth, gets to see the sun for the first time and feel it. I really love the ending. It warms my heart up every time, because I want to see the rest of the story. I want to see Sam and Cora going forward. So I'm pretty disappointed that they're not continuing their story, because I don't know what Tron Ares is going to be about. No one really knows. The plot is completely under wraps.
Yeah.
I thought it was a no-brainer to follow Sam and Cora going forward.
Yeah, I wonder why they're not pursuing those two characters, because it's really interesting now that you have a program living on Earth, what you can explore with that. But it looks like they're just doing their own new thing now, because neither of them are in the cast that they've announced.
Maybe a cameo.
Maybe.
Maybe
We'll see.
I'm sure Bridges will have a cameo somewhere.
Yeah, he's dead, though.
Is he, though?
Fucking blew up, bro.
But what if his programming is still somewhere in Tron's system? I mean, Sam has that flash drive at the end of the film. It's a blinking blue light in there. What's on that flash drive? Is it a backup of the Tron system? Is it the coding of his father that he somehow took out of there?
Dates and numbers.
The identity disc of Kevin Flynn. They use that to escape.
Yeah.
So because the identity disc itself, just to explain.
Well, because when Cora comes back into the grid, she'll have the disc automatically, right?
Exactly. So an identity disc or light discs are the most fundamental piece of equipment in two programs in both the game grid and the Tron system. They contain all that a program is in the form of a detachable glowing disc, normally worn on the upper back. Everything seen, heard, or otherwise experienced is recorded on the wearer's disc, even everything from before the disc is first acquired or reacquired. Obviously, this is why when Sam gets his disc, takes it, when he's like, oh, hey, man, what's up? Come on in. Let me check out your disc. You got this? And you can see the memories of Sam in the previous events from the scenes before he entered, obviously. Now, discs have two primary functions as weapons and for storing information. Is the entirety of Kevin Flynn's life and existence and soul in terms of a digitized coding on the identity disc? Can they use that to resurrect their father inside a different program, another Tron system somewhere else?
A better, faster grid.
And then they pull him out of the system?
That makes sense. That could totally work.
I think he's still alive.
Yeah, you're right. He could totally be alive still. He could be brought back, for sure.
Exactly. Like Cutter says.
An interesting fact is that after they did principal photography on this film, since it's a Disney production and they had purchased Pixar at the time, the Pixar writing team actually helped do rewrites for additional photography after the fact.
Oh, cool.
And they applied more backstory to Sam. I think maybe they rewrote his entire introduction, possibly.
Now, I also want to explain ISOs real quick, because this is what Cora is. She's the miracle now. She's the last surviving...
Miracle. You keep saying miracle.
Miracle.
You keep saying miracle.
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 Miracle. Think of mirror.
Miracle.
You don't say mirror.
I say miracle, baby.
Miracle.
She is the miracle. The ISO are isomorphic algorithms, were a race of programs that spontaneously evolved on the grid as opposed to being written by users. Their existence was considered a miracle by Kevin Flynn.
Nice.
However, Kluge considered them to be an obstruction in his mission to create the perfect system. ISOs differed from the basic programs, not in their appearance and capabilities, but in the uniqueness of their code base. They were said to be different due to them not being programmed or controlled by functions, protocols, and the need for purpose. While regular programs conform to the rigid structure defined by their users, ISOs evolved, complete with a genetic code of sorts that even Kevin Flynn could scarcely comprehend. This inner structure of their code would potentially have allowed ISOs to develop beyond the capabilities of regular programs. Now, the Purge, or the ISO War, is the name given to the monumental act of genocide within the TRON system, instigated to full eradication of the ISOs from the system by Clue. However, he doesn't know that Cora survived.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story that I wish I could have seen instead of just like a couple flashback shots.
Yeah. I think Olivia Wilde's great as Cora too. She's really
fantastic.
charming.
Yeah.
I love like kind of like the computer programming mix of human personality. Like the way she laughs is really like sounds like a program laughing, but also human at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. She's got this naivety and an innocence to her, and an infectious, charming personality. She's great in the role. She's fantastic, and I really like her and Sam. I think it's important that they don't kiss at the end, but they clearly have a connection. You know what I mean? And I think that smile that Kevin, he gives like a little smirk when he sees them flirting. He's like, nice.
Yeah, I think they didn't want to do completely everything that Tron did in 1982, where obviously falling in love with the program in that film, in the multiple kisses.
Multiple kisses. Jim, were there any boobs in there?
No Tron boobs.
No boobs?
No Tron boobs.
So you hate it. Where are the boobs in Tron? People have been making fun of you.
It's funny. It's a good bit.
Yeah.
It's a good recurring bit.
Did it have boobs in it? Then James didn't like it.
If anyone doesn't understand, I just always make fun of Hollywood because they just eliminated nudity over the last 5 to 6 years.
It's not so much to make fun of you, you're like angry about it.
It's funny.
You rant about it.
It's funny. That's why. It's a good recurring joke.
Yeah,
but it happened.
It's a funny joke.
It has happened. They just disappeared. Where are the boobs in Hollywood?
Not my Hollywood.
PG-13. We're guaranteed every.
Not my Hollywood. Not my Tron.
But overall, I know we were a little bit nitpicky with this film. It doesn't mean it's because we don't really like it. I really love this movie a lot. Anthony, I think this is maybe.
I like this movie.
Yeah, you earlier in the beginning of the episode, you said I fucking hate Tron Legacy. But I think it's because there's so much potential. That's why we wanted to really break down. I've seen this movie like 8 times, and I've had so much to say about it. Finally got the opportunity to.
How's it feel?
Feels good. Feels good.
I think I really liked it in theaters when we first saw it, but then on rewatches, it's one of those films for me that rewatches diminish it. And then this last rewatch, I'm just really like, I like it. It has a lot of things that I really enjoy, but as a whole, I'm not a big fan of the movie.
I revisit the music very often.
Oh yeah, the score is great.
Often.
Yeah, it's great. Jim
so,
tracks.
so terrific.
Yeah.
But that wraps our episode on Tron Legacy. Thanks so much for tuning into this breakdown and analysis of the 2010 film from Joseph Kosinski and Disney. Let us know what you think about Tron Ares. What do you think it'll be about?
It's Troning time.
It's Tron in time. Will Jeff Bridges be back as Clue? Are you disappointed that they're not going to follow the story of Sam, Flynn, and Cora in the real world? I'm kind of disappointed by that too. But recently we have Greta Lee, who was just in Past Lives, has been cast in it, as well as Evan Peters have also been cast in it. And I'm sure
he's playing Quicksilver.
He's playing Quicksilver in the Tron system.
No, I'm kidding. He's playing Jeffrey Dahmer.
But let's
want to show you some light cycles.
Let us know your thoughts about Tron Ares and Tron Legacy. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy-Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian Singleton, Tyler McFly, Andrew Hagan. Our chosen one patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.